Hello, and welcome to the Argyle AI Leadership Summit, Revolutionizing Business Strategy with AI. My name is Nick with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, and then we will turn the floor over to our esteemed opening keynote speaker. First, we would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsors, Adobe, SAP, and Zendesk. Our sponsors are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. Throughout today's event, you will also have the opportunity to be entered into a raffle. The more actions you take, the more points you will earn towards the raffle, and the top 10 point earners will be entered into a random drawing to win one of 3 fabulous prizes. So be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules tab on the left-hand navigation bar to see how you can earn points. We also welcome you to stay socially connected during today's event. For those of you who are active on social media, please use the hashtag Argyle Digital and follow us at Argyle Exec Forum. Also, be sure to follow Argyle on LinkedIn for special announcements. I would like to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which we have curated based on the feedback we have received over the years from our members. We have worked closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today, and we appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, we want to hear from you. So during each session, we encourage you to submit your questions and comments in the Q&A box on your screen. Following each presentation, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on your questions. Thank you again for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker, John Arsenault, Chief Information Officer and Chief Data Officer, Goulston and Stores. We're super excited to have John for his opening keynote presentation titled Issues and Challenges in Building Value with AI. Welcome, John. Over to you.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks for everybody that joined today. Today I'm going to be talking about issues and challenges in building value with AI. I'm going to cover 4 major topics: FOMO-driven tool rollouts lacking a business case, organizational data readiness, privacy and compliance issues with upstream LLM training, and uneven business process disruption within the business units. So just a caveat before I jump in. So AI obviously has been front and center for the past couple of years in the technology landscape, and there's a lot of excitement around this, and I share that excitement. But there's been, I believe, a mad rush to try to do stuff in this space that isn't always the most well-defined. And so that's what this session is about. Please don't take this as me being critical about the potential impact of AI. I think AI drives a tremendous amount of value when applied properly, and its use case for future endeavors is virtually unlimited. So that being said, I'll jump in. So one of the biggest challenges that I see with this is FOMO-driven tool rollouts, which is basically people looking to do something. So whether you're talking about CIOs or CTOs, chief innovation officers, even up to the CEO level, there's pressure to do something in this space. And often that pressure leads to organizations just going off the deep end with buying software, signing up for licensing, undergoing POCs. A lot of organizations are doing some in-house development around this, but with really no business case drivers or defined criteria of success. Some of this has actually been driven by individuals' personal KPIs to quote unquote implement AI. And then, this is proving to be very expensive for these organizations. And it can create a sense that AI tools are more hype than substance, because a rollout of a specific AI tool or even a general AI tool without a business case and understood ROI can lead to what appears to be failure within an organization of that tool. And so a guiding principle around this that I think folks might want to consider adopting is that AI is essentially no different than other technology solutions. You need to start with a defined business case. I personally view AI as an infrastructure technology versus a solution or a tool that you implement on its own. And it will be, I believe, embedded in every technology on the face of the earth at some point. And because of that, try to take an approach where if you keep that in mind, it really does drive you back to the fundamentals of good sort of housekeeping when it comes to implementing technology solutions, which is the business case. The second piece of this is organizational data readiness. And this is where I think a lot of the AI attempts are falling down, which is a rush to go out and build a tool or implement a tool. And an organization's data just isn't prepared for that. And so if you look at the fundamental architecture of an AI system, data is its fuel. And so an organization's success within the AI solutions themselves will be largely defined by the quality of the data that you are overlaying the AI solution on. I've found that a lot of organizations have been realizing this a little bit down the road into an implementation, into a proof of concept, and then they either have to double back or they perceive that the tool itself isn't ready for prime time and is failing. That's actually not usually the case. Most of the tools that are in the marketplace, I find, are pretty well thought out and defined, but applying them within your organization really requires you to have your data in line. And a lot of organizations simply just skip this step. And it's not something that you can deal with down the road. It's actually the first step. So you don't have to have every single repository of data in your stead be in perfect shape, but as you continue to build business cases around AI implementations, you're going to really want to focus on is the data that's going to be used within a system of high quality in a centrally easily implemented location, and are you in a position where you can take advantage of that data with the system that you're rolling out. And so a guiding principle here is just develop a data strategy and architecture prior to deploying AI systems. The third piece of this is privacy and compliance issues with upstream large language model training. And this gets a little bit into the weeds, but if your organization is deploying an AI tool and it relies on an upstream LLM that's outside of your organization's control, such as OpenAI or Anthropic or Gemini, etc., you really need to be fully aware of how the system's going to access and utilize your data. I find that this is something that people tend to realize after the fact. And at that point, unfortunately, it's a little bit too late. So once your data is used to train an LLM outside of your control, you cannot go back to that organization and ask them to remove it. It's actually impossible. I've heard Sam Altman discuss this in regards to the architecture of OpenAI's large language model and organizations reaching out to them to remove data that was ingested in it for training mechanisms. And he's on record basically saying we couldn't get the data out of the LLM even if we wanted to. So you need to be really careful here. And it's not just the major providers, it's all of your existing vendors that have large language models now deployed to enhance the tool sets that you already are using. You want to make sure that you're not violating your customer or client agreements. And in order to do that, you're really going to need to understand the architecture and the terms and conditions of the LLM and the design of the AI system that you're purportedly going to use before you engage even in a proof of concept. Some folks, I think, get misled and think that they can engage in a POC and they can worry about sort of these architectural and compliance issues, a little bit down the road. They just want to prove out that the system does what it says, kind of comes as advertised, so to speak. But even in a POC, if you ingest some of your organization's data, you can violate some of the agreements that you've made with customers. So you need to be really careful here. The next piece is uneven business process disruption within business units. And this is an interesting one because it's a little bit downstream. So if you deploy AI-enabled systems and you're relatively successful in regards to rolling the tool out under the premise of getting people to try and learn, you hear certainly a lot about like don't get left behind, make sure you've got an engaged user base in the AI tool sets that are relevant to your industry, from the most basic things to training people to do some prompt engineering, so to speak. What you need to be prepared for, though, is if you have some market of success within these rollouts, they will be completely skewed towards the people that tend to adopt more modern technology versus those that don't. And depending on the organization or the structure of the business unit, you can end up with an uneven adoption of these tools. And then the uneven adoption of the tools can lead to extreme differences in how business processes are being completed, how customers are interacting with an organization. It can lead to radically different experiences, or even radically different internal operation processes. And so depending on who adopts the new tools, it can really be disruptive to your business. And so you want to really think through this before you actually start getting people onboarded with different tools. And this is by no means a statement against trying things out and getting the early adopters to be excited about the technology. It's more just about thinking about how the technology's use cases within a business unit might change the way customers interact. It might change the way services are delivered. And is that okay to be segmented to a certain group of people, perhaps an undefined group of people that just happen to take to using the new technology, while others are, either not taking to that technology, or maybe they're not taking to it as quickly as you would like. So more just a warning about the impact to your business if you continue to go down this path of trying out new things in kind of a haphazard way. And so a good guiding principle here, I think, is just to define the business goals and processes within a business unit when you're introducing a new tool. It doesn't mean that certain folks can use it and others can't. You can certainly do that, and sometimes that's required to get technology to move along in an organization. You just want to know what you're getting into and what the impact could potentially be. I thought I'd share a little bit about what we're doing here. So I'm the CIO of Goulston and Storrs, which is a law firm headquartered in Boston. And so obviously the impact and the approach to these tools varies widely by the different markets that you all may be working in. But there's some sort of basics that I think all businesses can follow. And so within Goulston and Storrs, we're treating AI-enabled tools pretty much in the same manner as any other technology. And that tends to be hard to do these days because there's so much excitement and anxiety around AI. But each proposed tool requires a business case with a proposed return on investment. And again, this sort of circles back to AI is essentially an infrastructure technology that is enhancing things that already exist. And in some cases, it can enhance them greatly. So we're viewing this as a business case on a case-by-case basis. We've deployed an enterprise data lake with what I'll say is the proper governance controls, and this is a work in progress for us. So we didn't have our data product architecture in place prior to AI, but we were thinking about doing some of that unrelated to AI, more for just driving efficiency within the firm. And so bigger firms have versions of these, and certainly lots of businesses have data platforms, and that's nothing new. But if you don't have the right governance structure in place and you start plugging AI systems into these tools, you can end up with, sort of a runaway kind of scenario And so we're making sure that we're very careful about the governance around tools that will help enable some of the AI things that we're doing at the firm. The potential AI-based improvement use cases that we're going down the path of are targeted at processes in their entirety. So although we do engage with, say, practice areas or sub-practices or even individuals that are interested in emerging tech, we try to think about how do we move the needle by utilizing this technology, by bringing people in early, but ultimately this kind of needs to become the de facto standard way something is done. And that's a big challenge, as anyone that's ever been in the management of technology knows. But I think it's extremely important, going back to the previous slide where I talked about you can end up in a scenario where your clients or your customers are being served in a variety of different ways by the same organization, depending on who they get and who they work with. If there's been some adoption of cutting edge tech and then other folks have stayed away from it. And so we're taking, we're taking this pretty seriously. We don't want a bunch of sort of rogue groups doing things very differently than the rest of the folks at the firm. We want to make sure we bring along our entire client base for the efficiency gains that AI offers. We're also taking the time to understand product and LLM architectures and how that would impact our clients' data. And this can be a real barrier to adoption of cutting edge technologies. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that have received venture funding to pursue, really cool, interesting ideas that could be very beneficial for companies that adopt those technologies. But there's a mad rush around function and features. And I think this data protection component is really secondary these days in the discussions around adoption of AI. And so I think it's important, and it of course varies by organization and varies by industry, but I think it's important, generally speaking, to be aware of what you're getting yourself into when you put a large language model in the middle of your client and your own processes. And so we're trying to be mindful of understanding all of that stuff in detail. And that takes a lot of digging. And in some cases, it takes meeting with the organization that's providing the technology's product team to understand in detail exactly how data flows in and out, where the stuff is staged, the custody controls of data, and how all that works. And it can be different in every single instance. So lots of time's being spent there. And then finally, we're pursuing solutions around things like document automation for contracts, estate planning, leasing, metadata extraction, and document comparison. And in the legal work, that's sort of the crux of what attorneys and their support staff do from a mechanical standpoint on a daily basis. And so there's tremendous opportunities in the space of AI for our industry. I think there's also growing opportunities around some of the client work and internal operations within legal, making things more efficient. The potential to impact the business is fairly substantial. So we're very excited about this, but we're also taking a track of let's try to be overly cautious and overly careful about what it is that we actually implement, what we give people access to, and what impact that has on the firm's data and security. So with that, I'm at the end of my slides. I will open it up for questions, and I don't know, Nick, if we have some, we can jump into those.
Absolutely. Here's one. How can organizations balance the trade-off between the volume of data required for effective AI training and adhering to strict data privacy regulations?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. So in the legal industry, for example, there's very specific agreements that we make with our clients that we will custody their data in a certain way that we would never allow a large language model to get a hold of. And so if you have a specific use case in mind where you think AI could potentially help your organization, you very well may need to partner with somebody to have an LLM that you control entirely. And again, it's going to depend on the solution. There's lots of companies out there that partner with OpenAI and Anthropic and Google. Those are probably not the types of scenarios that you want to end up having your data escape to their LLMs and their, very general purpose, publicly open environments. There are a lot of companies that are building LLM AI systems that keep, what you're asking about very much in mind. And those are the, I think, the organizations that you wanted to look into.
Great. And here's another question from the audience. What are the potential legal pitfalls organizations face when deploying AI systems that generate proprietary outputs, and how can they proactively mitigate these risks?
Yeah, this is something that there's no actual answer to from a legal standpoint, right? This is something that I think will work its way through the courts. There's lots of mainstream sort of coverage on some of the things that OpenAI specifically has done to train their environment and their use of materials that they may or may not have legally acquired. And so I don't think that stuff has been settled by any stretch. I think, if you're running an organization's technology shop, you have to be really mindful of this very thing. And so if you're going to deploy an AI system and you're going to generate output, you probably should be aware of where the data is coming from that trains the system. If it's your data and you're generating the output, then I think you're generally okay as long as you safeguard where the LLM resides. But if you're grabbing data from other places and you might not have authorization to use that data in something that you're then eventually going to profit from, you're going to want to be very careful about that.
Right. And how can organizations effectively identify the right problems for AI to solve, ensuring initiatives deliver measurable business impact?
Yes, I'd almost flip that question around. It can kind of answer itself if you take it from the other end, which is I think you have to envision what are the workflow potential problems that you can solve as a business, and then use AI to tackle some of those versus trying to go out in the field and look at all these different AI solutions and say, which one should we buy? I would start with internally, how do we get better at doing X, Y, and Z, and then go finding a solution that can potentially address that. And of course, within your own sort of vertical, there are always lots of use case examples that either your colleagues at other organizations or even some of the sales engineer professionals within the software companies can help you draw on. Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. How can organizations effectively identify? No, I already asked you that one. How about this one? How can organizations ensure ethical AI implementation, avoiding bias while creating models that reflect diverse and inclusive perspectives?
Well, I think it depends on if you're developing your own AI system or not. So if you're using somebody else's AI system, which is the vast majority of implementations, I think most of the major players actually publish some of the ethical guidelines that they follow, and they're pretty open about talking about it. Whether or not that satisfies, your organization's need or your personal perspective on it, I think that's a case by case basis. If you're talking about training your own LLM, that's a whole nother ball of wax, and it's not a very easy thing to do because AI systems are at their core, they're just basically reflections of the data that you feed it. So if you feed it data that has implicit bias, then it's going to perform with implicit bias in all the things that it does. Not an easy thing to solve, and not something I can just tell you, here, go do X, Y, and Z, and it solves the problem. This is something that multi-billion-dollar companies wrestle with on a daily basis. But I think the key at this stage, at least it seems to me, the key at this stage is the organization at least focused on the fact that this is a problem, and they try to build some some inroads to solutions in their architecture, like out of the gate when they create the product.
All right, great. And we have a couple minutes. Do you have any closing thoughts, John?
I would just say, the excitement and kind of quote unquote madness around AI is really cool. If you're a technology person, you get sort of a version of this every 10 years or so. Something comes along and changes the game entirely. Just don't get caught up too much in the craze, and be sort of methodical about how you evaluate what tools you need and how you go about rolling them out for your organization.
Great. And thank you again, John, for an excellent keynote. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. As a reminder, please be sure to check out the prizes and raffle rules section to see how you can earn points for the chance to win one of several prizes. Our next session will begin at 11:35 a.m. Eastern Time, which will be a panel discussion titled AI Lessons Learned in 2024, Strategic Insights from Real-World Implementations. Please click the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected to the next session, and we look forward to seeing you there.